It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, June 5th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is looking at this new ish now era of Orange 1 year in.
Interesting stuff, new stuff.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We are going to get into this new era of Orange. Very fortuitous that there is a press conference today to talk about that very thing. First, I want to talk quickly about some potential Igor Zamula contract negotiations. That is apparently happening.
Yeah, I was happy to see that his agency tweeted something that they're in talks, and that's good. I think they should, give him a 3-year deal. They can get him fairly cheap now, and he's the kind of guy you want to have hang around. I mean, he passed through the Torch system. He did well. He maybe wasn't utilized exactly right, but he got through it. And I think at the end, he's earned his keep, and he's been good. We had a good year.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk more about his season and any latest news with that contract negotiations in a show next week, actually. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we have been sort of looking this postseason more at the hockey side of things thus far with our player recaps and all that and analysis. But one thing that we have kept pretty focused on, throughout this season was what the team looked like from a management perspective and what the, fan relations, building a community, all of that. And last summer, we sort of did an episode that was 100 days into the new administration, what had been going right, what had been, areas where they can improve. And we've been following that all season long. And now that this new era of Orange is not as new as it was before, we thought we'd take a look at it. And lo and behold, Keith Jones and Dan Hilferty will be talking about it today as well. So looking at it, I think, one of the things we talked about at that 100 days overview was, creating a really positive fan environment where, it kind of married getting new fans in with respecting and honoring the longtime fans and the traditions of the team, right?
Yeah, and that was something that they, were all in on, and that was good. And it's nice that they're carrying this through. I think fans feel good when they hear these updates from management. They kind of can feel closer to the team, makes them feel closer to the organization. Even if things aren't going perfectly on the ice, if things are going well and off ice, and they like what the direction, that's an important thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a few things that they have done extremely well over the course of this season. I think number one, not raising the season ticket holder prices was a very smart move, right?
Yeah, that's always a big thing. I mean, anytime, very few organizations are willing to do that ever, no matter how bad they are. It rarely ever happens. I only remember like 2 or 3 ever doing it in my lifetime. So covering sports. So I think that's a great olive branch right there.
Yeah. And I think the second thing that we talked about, as related to creating a new environment that's welcoming to new fans, but respecting the traditions. I think one of the things they did very well this year was bringing alumni back into the fold and making them like a prominent fixture in all of the events that they did this year.
Yeah, because all different fans grew up with different players. It's fun to see them around. I know players really like it when they see an organization has them back and they feel good about it, and they could talk about it like when they played. It's really it's one of those things that makes everybody feel good, and I think that's a real positive. I'll tell you though, I do have another idea. I don't know if Dan will listen to this one, but I do have it. So I feel like I'm going to just throw it out there. I think another way you could try and get, because I feel like still um, they maybe haven't gotten the young fans. And I mean by young, I mean like kids. And I feel
Like the
like,
tweens.
yeah, even younger than that, like 7 years old. I feel like they haven't gotten all of those fans back yet. And I feel like if they did like a team art contest where basically they put it out there, if you're like ages, I don't know, 7 to 12 or something, draw your favorite Flyers player. You let the players get filmed looking at them, the ones that, and have to be like a top five or whatever, and let
Hmm.
them let the actual player critique it. And then, at a game, maybe, an hour before the game, you have like the final three, maybe you have fan reaction, be the vote, like by the noise meter, something like that. I think that would be nice. I think kids would enjoy that. It would give them a reason to feel a little closer to the team too.
Yeah, I think so. I would say that, some of the theme nights that they had leaned in that direction a little bit when they had, the Marvel night or the Star Wars game. I know that appeals to, the older set who grew up with Star Wars, but that's, those IPs have continued throughout the generations there. They had, the gritty earmuff giveaway, things like that that are more
Yeah,
kid
I'm just
oriented.
thinking
But
back.
I see what you're saying.
Like when I was 10, 11 years old, I used to draw a lot, right? And that wasn't great. And
Mhm.
sometimes I cheated. My dad had what was called tracing paper. He would bring that from his shop because he worked in a professional printing shop. And so what I would do is I would get my pennants that I had on the wall, and it would be like the Rangers and the Islanders and all these different teams. And I would draw their, the pennant or at least their logos. And so I feel like, yeah, if I was doing that, I'm sure a lot of kids did that, and I'm sure a lot of kids now are way more advanced than I was back then and could draw, some good faces and a little hockey scene or something, and would impress the players, and I think everybody would like it.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think that, they did do some stuff that's youth oriented in addition in terms of the police athletic league game night that they had. And, obviously always having the mites on ice is a good time and gets the kids involved and youth
Yeah,
hockey involved. I think that's really good. I think, they do up Halloween better than a lot of
great job,
teams
no question.
around
Yeah,
the league do. So I want to give them their due, but they can always do more. I think in that front. And
yeah,
you're
like you
right,
should never
building
be out of ideas, right? Like there should never
right,
be a day where you're out of ideas. There's always things you could do to get more engagement.
right. So they did, the other things like they had the Mark Recchi Flyers Hall of Fame celebration, which was wonderful. The alumni game they had against Boston was a ton of fun
Yeah,
related
those are
to that.
great. People love
And
those.
bringing Mike Richards back into the
Yes,
fold was incredible. I
it
think that
was
was
important.
such a huge move for,
Yeah,
like, a
former
particular
captain. Yeah, from a
yeah,
different
for and
era, right.
exactly, for a particular slice of the fandom. I think that, that was extremely important, and then, even maybe a slightly different slice of the fandom for Wayne Simmons when he
Yeah.
retired as a Flyer, just an important thing to do, and it may have seemed obvious, but not every team would do that, and I think
No.
that this was just such an important thing that they did.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's obvious, and I think by having Simmons, like so let's see, like, in the last 5 years, fans that were really big fans of Simmons who had the jersey may have gotten disenfranchised with the team, may have stopped going to games, then they see Wayne Simmons coming back, and it's like, "Oh, you know what? I really liked Wayne Simmons, I still have the jersey," and you get them connecting again, and it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like a tacit endorsement of the
Right.
current management and like
Right,
I'm willing to come back and do this with them. That
right.
means they're headed in the right direction and I believe in what they're doing. And so I think it works both ways that the fans get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but at the same time, the management gets something out of it as well as far as the loyalty
Yeah,
aspect of it.
even though Wayne Simmons would have taken off Danny Briere's head if he had the puck in the corner. But aside from that, you're right.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But yeah, all of that was really good. We're going to talk more about the communications and messaging aspect of this new era of Orange, as well as kind of what questions we might have for Keith Jones and Dan Hilferty at their presser today, coming up next.
It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, players, props, and more. Again, keep going with the Celtics. Visit fanduel.com/locked on to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
We will be getting to your mailbag questions later in the show. And on tomorrow's show, we are going to recap the new era of Orange press conference that they have today. Plus, we are going to preview the NHL Combine, which Russ is attending, and talk about what it is and what we get out of it. Plus, look at a couple of the prospects that are lesser known that'll be there and what they can get out of it as well. So that should be really good for tomorrow's show. So as far as communication and messaging, I think that was the third big thing. I think looking at this season is, are they going to be transparent? Are they going to be responsive to fans? And I would say, with rare exceptions, I would say as a general rule, they were pretty transparent.
Yeah, would I like to see him a little bit more? Sure. Are they better
Mhm.
than what they used to be? Yes. So they're definitely better than they were, but there's still room for improvement. There were still key times where we had not very much at all to go on as far as covering the team, but I did feel like it improved.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that, there's a certain degree of secrecy that you have to have in terms of the hockey ops side of things. And so that's kind of separate from what we're talking about here, that in terms of transparency of what the team was planning and how they were approaching different things and how they were building their relationship with the community and plans they have for the future. I think most of that has been pretty clear in terms of continuing to build rinks in the community, building the relationship with Snyder Hockey, and they've extended the fellowship for somebody from Snyder Hockey working for the team, and I think all of that is very, very good.
Yeah, definitely very good. That's something that they do better than most organizations, and it's really good for the city, and they really people seem to really appreciate it. And look, hockey is an expensive game. We know that, so we can't just sit up here and act like everybody can afford it all the time because they can't.
Yeah, and I would say, where some of the room for improvement is, they had a lot of town halls, right? But what kind of follow-up did we get from them?
Yeah, you would think in an email or some sort of something little note down the line. Hey, we heard you in that one, and this is what we did. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that would be great. I mean, that's something that is that little extra follow through. Takes a lot to do it though. I know that from just working in the business world.
Sure. And I think that when they have a lot of these town halls, they are largely, if not entirely, season ticket holder focused, which is important. And I understand that. But there's a fan base outside of season ticket holders that maybe can't afford season tickets. But I think their voices are also very important to hear and what would get them to buy, a 5 game plan, a 10 game plan and all of that and maybe get them into a season ticket holder path. But I just think that there isn't enough input from
Yeah,
non-season ticket holders.
I think if they wanted to do it that way, they could do it over the summer, maybe like a couple weeks before camp opens as a virtual town hall.
Hmm.
and have it be moderated, but let some non-season ticket holder people say this is what's holding me back. I mean, that I think that would work
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, there's plenty of format ways to do it, but I
Hmm.
think that's been, for me, the big piece that's missing,
That's fair.
especially just, again, given how expensive hockey is to attend
Hmm.
in general. And I think that you don't want to alienate season ticket holders, but at the same time, there's so much done for them as far as
Right.
the town halls and stuff. And I've talked about them as my parents are season ticket holders, and
Yeah.
my mom has attended several of them, and I've gotten sort of the inside scoop from her on what's gone on there. But I just think that non-season ticket holders weight needs to go up a little bit as well. I would say, as far as questions that I would want to ask them in this press conference, I would really want to know how they would grade themselves this year. Like, looking back, what do they think about the job they did, and where's their assessment of room for improvement?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I think it might be fair if somebody asked the question, do they like the coverage that we in the media are giving them?
Hmm.
Are there things that, have frustrated them? Are there narratives that have frustrated them? I think it's fair to have that two-way conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in terms of what they're hearing in the media, what their assessment is of what the fan base is thinking for real versus what is trending on Twitter. Those are very
Right.
different things, as we talk about
Right.
very, very often. But how do they get their information, I
Yeah.
think, is another question, right? you know what are the sources of information other than these town halls
Hmm.
for what they think the fan experience has been this season, and what they can improve on, because I think the method is just as important as the data. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No question. I agree with that.
And, I think, given that, what was the thing they heard the most from fans that they need to improve on from a fan experience
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. There's no question the fan experience there is good. I definitely get around to other venues and with other teams.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think they're in the upper 25% of it. But there are still teams that do it better. I mean, I think this one's still improving, to be honest, but I think it's way better than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I would say so. And, but just even with the in arena experience, right?
Right. And that's what
Finding
I'm
the
talking about. That's really where I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, I think, there are things beyond that, like communication frequency and type, and, where do you meet people where they are in
Right.
terms of social media versus
Right.
email versus, there's all of that that goes
Sure.
into
Sure.
all of this, and trying to communicate with the widest swath of the fan base that you can. So how are they doing that, and what are they getting out of it, is really important. But as far as the in-game fan experience, yeah, I think there's always going to be some people who complain about the volume there,
Oh
because
yeah.
it is loud, and sometimes during a break in the action you want to talk to somebody and you can't. But also, the music's pretty good most of the time.
It
So
is. Music has gotten better, I will say that.
yeah, yeah, I think that has improved, but it can always get better. And we've said they're masters at putting together those tribute video
Oh, absolutely.
packages,
Yeah.
and their ceremonies are
They're great.
absolutely first rate.
Top
But
notch.
there's the other stuff in between, like what's on
Yeah.
the video screen. Is it useful information? We have talked about them covering the prospects a little bit more,
Yeah, they
which
still need more prospect coverage. They do.
they do. I think that they've done a good job of it on the website and in their news aspect. They
Yeah.
do little prospect check-ins, but they don't really bring it into the arena as
Yeah,
much as
I
they
saw a
could.
few this year. I saw maybe like three, and I think Brink was one of them, if I remember correctly. And it's like, yeah, you need the more far-reaching ones. Like everybody knows Bobby Brink. You got to dig a little deeper with some of them. At least go OHL, WHL, at least some of those. I don't expect for the guys overseas. That's fine.
Yeah, so, there is room for this, and I think the other question that interests me personally is that, did they see this past year as a little bit of a get out of jail free card, or as a pass, right? Because it was their first year. Both of them, Dan Hilferty and Keith Jones, were new at this job. And so, do they feel like they had a little bit more leeway and a little bit more grace because of all of that? Or do they feel like that they were held to just as high a standard as somebody with experience in the job? And then, how do they see that changing in year two?
We know they had a little extra grace period, but I don't think they ever outwardly took advantage of that or acted that way. But
Mhm.
as any job, 2, 3 years into it, the expectations keep growing. So like you can't stop that.
All right. Well, we'll see what they talk about at the press conference today and what they get asked, how they answer it. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. But you've got some questions for us, and we are going to answer them coming up next. Yeah, I think just the way his mind works out there is very center oriented. And I think when you talk about his playmaking, it's about how he works with the wings in order to create opportunities. And, sometimes they're for himself and sometimes they're for somebody else. And I know I've said this before, but my favorite play is when Morgan Frost is behind the net, dishing it to somebody else in front of the net. And, he tries to do that not infrequently. So I really think center is the right role for him for sure. Our next question from Chris: would you bring back Walker for another round? I'm just worried about Drysdale's health and they could actually use another puck mover. And I want to focus on the Drysdale's health part of this question because I think we've talked about Sean Walker and it's basically impossible for him to come back. I mean, I would be genuinely shocked, but I think there is reason to be worried about Drysdale, right?
Yeah, I mean it's multiple injuries to that shoulder. This time it's a core injury. I get it, but he did also tweak it before he got to the Flyers, right? So, it's one of those things. Tarasenko's had like 3 or 4, and he's still playing. So he's gonna play. It's just, yeah, if you want to worry about his play dipping as far as him not, being like a 60-point defenseman, I get it. And we may already be at that point, but he's still a really good skater and there's still a lot of things he could do to help the team. So, it's hard. It's hard to really, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not saying he's never going to get injured. I'm just saying I wouldn't worry about it day to day.
Right. And I feel like where they are with the rest of the defensive core, other than the very, very special thing that Drysdale does in terms of his power play work, I think they can cover that with other people to a large degree. Not entirely, but I think that in the depth they can figure it out. So I think it was still worth, trying to get him if they had to
Oh yeah.
trade Cutter Gauthier. I think this was a great return still. I don't have any issue with that at all. So, some concern, but also I feel good about what the plan B is here. And I don't often feel good about the Flyers plan B, but this one I do
Yeah,
actually.
no, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Brandon wants to know, with the possibility of this long-term extension for Konechny, Tippett's locked up. Mitchkov is maybe coming, and Forster really making a case for himself. Is our future top six wingers a mixture of these four with two right wingers playing the left side? And is that okay?
I mean, if it happens, it's okay. I don't know if it's exactly going to happen that way, but it could. Again, the long term part of Konechny is what bothers me. If he gets 8 years, I'm telling you, even the best Konechny fans, come year 5, are going to probably start to worry about what's going to happen in years 6, 7, and 8. So we have to see how that's going to go. But otherwise, yeah, I think if you have a couple guys playing the other side on the wing, it's not the end of the day, end of the world.
Right. And I think that, Brandon's later note about Morgan Frost not being a part of the team's future, we've talked about him a little bit already. But I think that, when you're talking about the centers in relation to that I really think they're going to keep Morgan Frost unless they can get a different center in return in some other deal.
I mean, a lot of things have to happen, right? But at the end of the day, Danny Briere seems to really like Frost, and let's face it, Frost could outlast the coach, even if the coach isn't thrilled with him. So just hang in there on that one. We're not sure where it's going.
Yeah, maybe the number has something to do with it. I don't know. But
Could.
we'll see. At L Valentina asks, what would it take for the Flyers to acquire the Sabres first round pick if the Flyers take the 12th pick and Forster, Drysdale, and Urson off the table? Would Danny even consider that?
Sorry, as far as that getting that pick from the Sabres, I know it's out there that the Sabres are, maybe open to trading that. The only way they're going to be open to trading that pick is by getting someone like Forster. And the minute you take him off the table, they're not going to be interested. They want somebody with low term now, with a high future. That's the only way they're trading that pick.
Yeah, um I think with an 11th overall pick, you're going to have to give up a lot. And I know like Forster, Drysdale, Urson off the table is fine, but you know, are you going to have to give up your second round pick plus, your compensatory pick plus a player plus a prospect just to get it? I just, given that the Flyers have the 12th pick and another first round pick, I just don't know, like, unless you're moving up like 3 to 4 spots in the draft, I just don't know that it's worth it.
Right. I agree. If you're not getting in the top 10, I don't think it's worth it to start moving assets, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. Our last question from Jay. Other than if Mitchkov comes over, what is one thing the Flyers could do this offseason that would really excite the fan base?
They could just play more of the young guys. They could say, "Hey, Emil Andre's got a shot to win a roster spot." I think if they were to say that, I think that would excite the fan base. But they probably won't. I don't expect the coach to say that there's an open, uh, competition. But if they did that and the coach came out and said there's an open competition, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 spots for some of these young guys, I think people would perk up.
Yeah, if they signed 0 free agents this offseason, I think that would be bonkers and also really cool to see, how the prospects would play out.
Yeah, showing the commitment and letting those guys try and, because look, you could say that, not do that, let the young guys try, and you could still sign guys late
Yeah.
if they fail. But just doing that, I think would ignite the fan base a little. I agree.
Yeah, I think that is the thing I would do. That will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow with the presser takeaways. We're going to do that scouting combine preview. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got questions you want us to answer on the show, like we just did, let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.